Gold was considered always what is called hard money. In fact, the word hard money comes from the fact that gold is physical and hard, just like sound money comes from the fact that when you hit gold, there's sound, right? So it was always considered this hardest money. Now, Bitcoin follows the same rules, but they are strictly enforced by the protocol, which makes it a better form of gold. So not only a better form of money, but a better form of gold. Gold has been controlled by governments. I've mentioned this at the beginning when it comes to removing the gold standard. But gold also then, and during the Second World War, for example, in the UK, people were not allowed to hold gold personally. The same happened in the US in the 70s. You had to sell your gold to the government because the government needed to increase its reserves. This has happened historically, and if any bad situation were to happen like it has happened in the past, the same thing would happen. I mean, we're here today in Poland. Whatever purchase of gold you do in Poland, your personal information has to be given to the government saying how much gold you owe, so that they know where they can come knock at your door if ever they just need to increase their gold reserves and don't have the cash to buy it themselves. It's so much easier to confiscate it.
In the past 7 years, there's been an average of one international monetary crisis every year. Now, who gains from these crises? Not the working man, not the investor, not the real producers of wealth. The gainers are the international money speculators. Because they thrive on crises, they help to create them. In recent weeks, the speculators have been waging an all-out war on the American dollar. The strength of a nation's currency is based on the strength of that nation's economy. And the American economy is by far the strongest in the world. Accordingly, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
Bretton Woods established an arrangement whereby, supposedly from 1945 and the end of the war onward, all currencies were convertible to the dollar and the dollar to gold. At that time, gold reserves were the final mechanism for settling balance of payments deficits. But Bretton Woods forestalled this process by permitting the sole reserve currency, the main reserve currency, to be considered as official reserves for foreign central banks, such that they could settle all their deficits in dollars as opposed to gold. That's the fundamental difference between the classical gold standard and what is called the gold exchange standard, which Bretton Woods enshrined in law and in treaty. In 1971, both Britain and several other countries decided to encash their huge accumulations of dollar reserves under the Bretton Woods system for gold, and of course, President Nixon, in his own way, decided to trump them.
George says as long as we do not have convertibility, he says the Europeans can't do all that much to us.
They can't.
Because he says when we had convertibility, then they had a right to lecture us about what we ought to do. But with convertibility, without convertibility, that is not the case.
These countries had the right to claim gold to redeem their dollar reserves. It would put the United States in a position of insolvency.
We just shouldn't get all that excited about the fact that they worry about our budget. Is that your view?
That's exactly right. They can't do one cockeyed thing, and they'll say, oh, well, we've got to maintain our relations. We've asked them to hold dollars. And I said, no, we didn't ask them to hold dollars. They've held dollars. It's been in their interest to hold dollars.
That's right.
And I said, hell with them. I'm not worried about them. I'm worried about us.
That's right.
1960s was filled with financial crises that involved the dollar, but the total collapse came in 1971. He issued an executive order on August 15th, 1971, and said, I'm sorry, we're not paying our debts. We're certainly not paying our debts in gold.
To our friends abroad, including the many responsible members of the international banking community who are dedicated to stability in the flow of trade, I give this assurance. The United States has always been and will continue to be a forward-looking and trustworthy trading partner. In full cooperation with the International Monetary Fund and those who trade with us, we will press for the necessary reforms to set up an urgently needed new international monetary system.
To this day, gold can only be traded on the markets during weekdays because some people have decided this. With Bitcoin, no one can make such decisions. Individual exchanges could, but would be losing against their competition. Governments have no way of knowing whether people own any. It is the safest way to hold wealth that is native to the internet, therefore is available always, everywhere. No asset in history has ever been this easy to acquire, allowing anyone with an internet connection to tap into the network anonymously and be able to access their assets the same way, regardless of their geographic location. Again, anonymously.